It's a mad, 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 mad world. But it's ours, so let's enjoy it as we lampoon the news. I am your man.
Ishi Hakase.
We're going to bring you the funny, the weird, the strange, the unbelievable, the stupid, the refreshing, and maybe the provocative. So, grab a drink, get your snack, kick back, let's get to it. So you can see I'm coming to you from Tokyo, site of the 2020 Olympic Games, now in 2021 because of effing COVID. I was worried about the games becoming a super spreader, but in spite of all that, I'm quite enjoying it. I love the events. I get to see this competition in areas that normally I wouldn't see, like badminton and table tennis and 3-on-3 basketball, wrestling, boxing, judo, kayaking, all of these really, really wonderful sports. And as I said, I find it quite an enjoyable viewing experience. Now, I will say the three athletes I was most looking forward to see are no longer participating in the games. We know that Simone Biles has stepped out because she's dealing with some mental health issues that she will certainly resolve in the future. Naomi Osaka, she got bounced out in one of the early rounds in tennis. And Sha'Carri Richardson never even made the trip because she took a toke off of a spliff. And I plan to talk about that a little later, but not today. I will say out of all of these events, track and field is certainly my favorite. But the seminal event for me is actually the opening ceremonies and the Parade of Nations. I find it a wonderful spectacle. I like seeing the uniforms. Always like seeing that shirtless dude from Tonga. I know he's a treat for some. And although the "Here comes Djibouti," as in the African nation, the Republic of Djibouti, it's old and tired, but I still wait for it. Now, I will say, in my opinion, I thought the Beijing Games really reset the standard for what the opening ceremony should be. Following that was London, and I spent about 2 hours very confused. But I watched, and I continue to watch every 4 years. And I'll say my best memory of the Olympic Games and the opening ceremonies was from the Atlanta Games, when Muhammad Ali lit the torch. And we were so excited because Muhammad Ali had not been seen in public for some time. He was dealing with Parkinson's. It was this big, big secret, and there he was. And he really was the greatest. He was the greatest amateur athlete. He was the greatest professional athlete. We certainly have to respect him for his stance on social injustices. So it was a really, really terrific experience. But now we come to today's opening ceremonies, the Tokyo Olympics. And for the most part, I found it an enjoyable affair. And we can all see how proud all the athletes walk into the stadium carrying themselves with much dignity through the Parade of Nations. And yes, this is a made-for-TV spectacle. And the way people entered, sort of sets the context for all the things that we're going to see and how we perceive all the countries and all the athletes that we're certainly less familiar with. But in trying to bridge that knowledge gap, one South Korean broadcaster seemed to have taken a left turn, drawing from a bank of stereotypes to depict several countries. So when Haiti's athletes walked into the stadium, a caption posted on screen by South Korea's MBC, Munhwa Broadcasting Corporation, the network put a graphic up that read, "The political situation is fogged by the assassination of the president." When Syrian athletes entered, NBC aired a caption that said, "Rich underground resources, a civil war that has been going on for 10 years. Another NBC caption described the Marshall Islands as once a nuclear test site for the United States. And when Ukraine's athletes entered the parade, NBC showed an image of the Chernobyl disaster, which we know was the world's worst nuclear accident. When Italy walked in, the broadcaster pulled up an image of pizza. For Norway, a salmon fillet was shown. For Team El Salvador, a country where Bitcoin is legal tender, a picture representing the cryptocurrency was shown. And for Team Romania, an image of Dracula was used. The broadcaster's gaffe led to a deluge of online criticisms, with one South Korean Twitter user writing, "NBC, wow. How would it be if South Korea was introduced as the country of the Sewol ferry disaster?" On Saturday, NBC issued a formal apology to the countries concerned and our viewers. The images and captions are intended to make it easier for the viewers to understand the entering countries quickly during the opening ceremony. However, we admit that there was a lack of consideration for the countries concerned, and inspection was not thorough enough. It is an inexcusable mistake. The broadcaster also promised a full review of its editorial processes, vowing no more Olympic blunders. NBC is not the only broadcaster coming under fire for its coverage of the game so far. China's Consulate General in New York has criticized the American network NBC for using an incomplete map of China when broadcasting the Chinese delegation's entry at the Tokyo Olympics opening ceremony. In a statement released on social media Saturday, the consulate's spokesperson said, "The map created a very bad influence and harmed the dignity and emotion of the Chinese people," and urged NBC to recognize the serious nature of this problem. The Consulate General in New York would like to point out that the map is an expression of national territory, which symbolizes national sovereignty and territorial integrity, the statement said, adding, "Attempts to use the Olympic Games to play politics and tricks and self-promotion to achieve ulterior motives will never succeed." So let's pause for a moment, because I think two things need to happen here. The first is lighten up. There is no malice intended by these gaffes. NBC is not trying to subvert Chinese sovereignty. There is no political agenda here. They just made a mistake. I mean, come on, NBC, this is the same network that gave us New Amsterdam and Mama's Family and a remake of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Bad Judge, and let's not forget about the classic Joey. I mean, they just don't have it in them to push a political agenda like so. It's just probably some underpaid guy or gal in a control room, and they say, hey, bring up a map of China. Taiwan got cropped off, and that's the end of the story. It's a simple mistake, and that's all it is. It should be forgiven. Now, let's go to the other side. Remove foot from mouth. I mean, come on, people. How many idioms do we have to remind us to check first? Look before you leap. Measure twice, cut once. Look both ways before crossing the street. Be on the lookout. Watch where you're going. You can't be too careful. Don't press send. And check yourself before you wreck yourself. Or the remix, chickadee check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself. The expression, put your foot in your mouth, means to say something tactless or embarrassing, usually at a bad moment. It expresses a form of regret and blame, and it's only, typically done by accident. Despite that, the result is often somebody being offended or upset, which can, only lead to one's own embarrassment. Now, yeah, it can get you in trouble, but for the most part, it's just a common social blunder. And look, we've all done it. And most of the times, we are eventually forgiven. I mean, who out there has not experienced the pregnancy pause? You know what the pregnancy pause is. There's usually two scenarios, and I'm not sure which one is worse. So the first scenario is that you see your neighbor, and you're like, "Hey, Bill, congratulations." And Bill replies, "Congratulations on what?" Well, Karen being pregnant. Oops. Karen is not pregnant. And then the second scenario is when we speak to Karen directly. "Hey, Karen, when are you expecting?" Or it goes like, "Hey, Karen, is it a boy or a girl?" Karen is not pregnant. She's just portly. This is the moment in the conversation where everyone goes silent and you wish you could take it all back. As I said, we've all been there. Sometimes our words materialize faster than our brains are able to keep up with. Of course, there's no way to take it back. It's a terrible feeling, and all we can do is hope that everyone in the room understands that we simply screwed up. Now, whether it's goofing up in front of a significant other's parents or making an accidental snide remark to a total stranger, it's never fun to fumble with our words, but we've all experienced it. We just hope that the person will accept our apology, and if they don't, there's nothing else for you to do but just move on. I mean, your man right here.
Ishi Hakase.
Your man just recently experienced this awkwardness when I was texting with my daughter one evening. She asked, "Well, what are you going to be doing on a Friday night?" And I replied, I don't know, probably Netflix and chill. And she replied in all caps, "What?" Question mark, exclamation mark. Now I replied, "Well, I'm going to probably just binge watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, have a beer or two." And she wrote back, "Ishi, I don't think you know what Netflix and chill really means." Well, I do now. And in case you're wondering, yes, my daughter calls me Ishi. Well, here are a few stories from everyday people who have put their foot in their mouth. And we'll just have a little fun with it. The first time I met my girlfriend's mother, I wanted to compliment her with something like, "I can see where Jane gets her good looks." Instead, it came out, "Wow, I bet when you were Jane's age, you used to be good looking too." This was followed by what felt like 5 minutes of awkward silence. She just scowled at me. I saw a beautiful girl at a party my friend was throwing, and I asked if she would introduce us. She told me that girl was out of your league, but I persisted. When I was finally introduced to Gabby, I said, "Nice to meet you. My name is Gabby." I realized then, as she walked away, that I was definitely out of my league. I was just leaving my girlfriend's grandmother's funeral. On the way out, I shook her father's hand and said, "Thanks very much for inviting me." As if this was a party. You've got to think and move away from these rote interactions and think about the context that you're situated in. When I saw the movie Wedding Singer and someone said, "Good, she needs to get laid," I really didn't know what that meant. I just assumed it was something people said when someone was taking too long to do something. So one day I was at my aunt's house, and she informed me that my cousin was getting married. And I replied, "Good, she needs to get laid." I look back on that now and I just feel like hiding. Once I offered a pregnant lady my seat. It went something like, "Here, you can have my seat. I know what it's like. My wife is pregnant too." Turns out she wasn't pregnant. And it also turns out that he wasn't a lady. Boom! Now, celebrities, they are not immune to putting their foot in their mouth. And there's lots and lots of celebrity stories. We just don't have enough time to get into them. But here are a couple of my favorites. From Raven Symone. Raven. Months after Raven sent Twitter into a frenzy for her African American comments, if you remember, she said that she didn't consider herself African American. She was simply American. She tried to do some damage control, but she just dug herself into a deeper hole when she conducted an interview with E! News and said that she had participated in Ancestry.com, who sent her her DNA test, and she was able to see that she was from every continent in Africa. She also noted that she was from every continent except the one in Europe. Raven. CeeLo Green had some problems where he angered both women and men everywhere after tweeting some statements that sounded like he was defending the right to rape. After appearing in court on charges of rape and drugging a woman with ecstasy, he tweeted a slew of nonsensical defenses such as, "People who have really been raped remember," and "If someone is passed out, they're not even with you consciously," implying that somehow meant consent. It was only a matter of time before venues started dropping him from their lineups. He was forced to issue an apology, and he ultimately deleted his Twitter account. CeeLo, don't press send. Tyrese Gibson. Tyrese found himself in some hot water in 2013 when he made some cruel, fat-shaming comments. In an interview with All Hip Hop, the actor and director had some choice words for people who he felt were fat by choice. "If you are fat and nasty, and you don't like the way you look, do something about it," he said. "When you take a shower and you put your fat, nasty body in the shower, and by the time you get out, the mirrors are all steamed up so you don't know what you're looking at and why you did this to yourself. Ultimately, your big ass should work and work off all that food that you've been eating, and that's why you're big as hell." I'm willing to bet he lost a few thousand fans after that. And if you're overweight, that doesn't mean that you're nasty. It just means that you're overweight. I would assume Tyrese learned something from that. 50 Cent. He's been known to throw out some snarky jabs. But one time he called a man autistic over Twitter. When an overzealous fan sent a tweet about his new album, he responded, "Hey, just saw your picture, fool. You look autistic. I don't want no special ed kids on my timeline following me. Follow somebody else." The comments were so offensive, even actress and autism activist Holly Robinson Pete, who wrote an open letter to the rapper. 50 Cent later apologized, saying, "I realize my autism comments were insensitive. However, it was not my intention to offend anyone, and for this I apologize." What was your intention then? What was your intention, to look at somebody and then just decide they look like they're autistic? And secondly, why on earth are you getting into Twitter spats with someone that you don't even know. More on Twitter later. Gabba Ray, in an interview, if you remember her, she played the character Precious. Well, she thought it was fun and games to use the word tranny no less than 5 times in 1 minute. So while discussing living in New Orleans, Sidibe offered up a story saying there was a bar that we would frequent, and every time we'd go, when we'd be leaving, every single time, there would always be like a gang of cops arresting trannies. And I don't know what's going on with trannies, but that tranny on tranny crime needs to stop. I don't think that's why they're being arrested. Sidibe released an apology after backlash from the LGBT community saying, "I've apologized several times for using the word tranny. I didn't realize that it was a slur. I'm very sorry for my poor choice of words." Kofefi! Foot in mouth has never been more amplified than it has on the official foot in mouth platform, Twitter. Entrepreneurs, you need to develop a foot in mouth function that delays a tweet for 30 seconds before going live, just so people have a little time to rethink, and do they really want to put this out there? So I have a few what I will describe as self-professed gaffes from Twitter. So we want to make sure that we recognize the author's courage and self-deprecating humor. At K Nguyen. I often think fondly of the stranger on the subway who saw me playing a game on my phone and told me to read an effing book, not knowing at the time I was a full-time book reviewer. You got to stay out of people's business. This comes from at Thomas05MW. Look at the solar system. Every single other planet has been proven round. So what cluster F of events led you to believe that the Earth is actually flat? Riddle me that. The reply from the Flat Earth Society: the Earth is not a planet. I was in the park and this lady called out, "Anyone who wants ice cream, come over here." And I headed over with several others. She handed out ice cream to them, and then she asked me, "Who are you?" I realized at that moment the rest of the people were all her family members. 30 years later, I still cringe. That is from at It's Andy Ryan. In my teens, I once bought a muffin back to an unnamed Canadian coffee establishment, Tim Hortons, saying that there was glass shards on my muffin. The clerk pointed out to me that those were sugar crystals. I still cringe. That is from M. Norman 87. My mom was walking me to school when I was 5, and I saw my friend Trevor up ahead. So I ran on to catch him and saying, "Trevor, Trevor," and continued to call his name. As I got close, I realized it wasn't him. So I just kept running past, shouting, "Trevor, Trevor." Good playoff at Frank Spicer. Good playoff. This is from @GoldCell2007. During a small town 4th of July playground games, we called up 5 and 6 up for the potato sack races. I lined up with the other kids and ended up coming in first place. They handed me my ribbon. I accepted it. Then I looked around and realized it was 5 and 6 year olds, not 5th and 6th graders. You must have looked like a real ringer on that one. Good job. Good job. This is from @Carrie1958. 30 years ago, gas stations with convenience stores had just become a thing. I stopped for Pepto-Bismol. The clerk asked if I had gas with that. Indignantly, I told the clerk that I only had an upset stomach. And then I walked out to see the gas pumps. I still cringe. @P. Corey Gonzalez. I once took my child to a meetup picnic for the camp that she was going to attend. We brought food and stayed for a while and ate. And as we were leaving, I saw the actual group across the park. We'd been eating with a local church group, and they were too polite to ask who the hell we were. This is from Kaylin KL Inkles. I was at a coffee shop waiting for my coffee when I ate the largest muffin sample on the plate. Wasn't until I started to, take one more tasty bite of this sample that I realized it actually was not a free sample, but someone's dirty plate they had returned to the counter. I left without my coffee in horror. In horror. My sister was making a peanut butter sandwich when she quickly needed to change my nephew's diaper. While changing the diaper, she saw some peanut butter on her arm and licked it off. It wasn't peanut butter. @Unknown. One time I was taking an order for a very beautiful sounding cake when I worked at a bakery, and I asked the woman on the phone, "Whose birthday is it?" And she told me very sweetly that it was actually a cake for one's funeral. I wanted to crawl beneath the floor. That's @Maddie Mart. @Alyssa Casimir. When I was a kid, I ran up to a woman in line, pinched her butt, laughed, and then hugged her from behind, thinking it was my mom. It wasn't. I think about this moment almost weekly, and my stomach still drops 35 years later. Alyssa, of course, my question to you is, you routinely pinched your mother's butt? @Emily Cottagen. When I was 7, I was going back to school shopping for new shoes, and I saw a pair of shoes next to a box. So I tried the shoes on. I walked around in them, and then this girl looked at me with an absolute horrified look and said, "Give me back my shoes." So she tried on somebody else's shoes while they were actually trying on some new shoes. Pretty good. @You're Not the Boss of Me. I'm pretty sure I carjacked a nice old lady one morning. Taking what I thought was my lift to work, I noticed that she was extremely nervous and asked me where we were headed and how to get there, etc. I just thought she was new. When I got to work, I noticed the ride that I had hailed had been canceled. Oops. Well, guess what? That actually happened to me and a couple of my colleagues here. We were waiting for a grab car, and car pulled up and we all got in, and the guy looked at us and said, excuse me, this is a private car. Needless to say, we were quite embarrassed. At Sophia Rumble, my dad and his sister were swimming in a local pool. They were doing laps when she spotted him taking a breather at the pool's edge. She swam up behind him, put both hands on his bald head, and dunked him underwater. While she held him there, ignoring his flailing, my actual dad swam past. So Sophie almost drowned a stranger. At Wind is Real, I corrected a teacher when she spoke about the old prediction that the world was going to end in 2012. I explained in front of the class that it was actually supposed to end in the year 2012. Why didn't someone teach me the basics of English? I walked into work one day and everybody was standing around looking somber. I loudly asked, geez, who effing died? And at that moment, a guy turned to me and said, yes, my grandma just died. And he had tears in his eyes. You have to read the room, people. Take time and read the room. Kofefi. Our last one comes from Clive_Stringer. I was in my car. It was a hot day, windows down, with my 4-year-old son in the car when a person of restricted growth came walking by. My son started pointing at him, so I distracted him and put on his favorite Disney tape. Mortified when I heard the opening song, which went, hi-ho, hi-ho. I don't think you made the situation any better, and I am probably going to hell for even sharing that story with you. That's it for me. We had a good time, but as usual, I want to remind everybody that you matter. If you're struggling with any issues, mental health, depression, phobias, anxiety, eating disorders, and addiction, talk to someone. We're seeing it more and more. We know that Symone Biles, she's struggling. We know Naomi Osaka, just a few weeks before, she's struggling. It happens to all of us. It happens to the best of us. Make sure that you go out and you get the help you need, or you talk to somebody. And if you see someone that might be in distress, talk to them, because we need everybody here to enjoy all of this great content and all the wonderful things that the world has to offer. That is my time. I will check in with you in a couple of days. Make sure you subscribe. You know why, because the platform won't let you do much unless you have subscribers. And if you have news, whether it's weird, funny, shocking, goofy, or generally unbelievable, send it along. Follow me on Instagram.
Ishi Hakase.
Yes, check it out. And I hope that you enjoyed this news or not news, because the world is a very interesting and curious place. I ask you once again, keep your heads up, stay positive, spread the word, stay safe, and much love to you all. I am OWT.